Today I'm making something I've wanted for a very long time. Cloud's Buster Sword from Final Fantasy VII, and I'll be making it in just 2 hours with one 8-foot 2x4. Let's get started. First, I marked and cut the 2x4 into 3 separate pieces, measuring 4 feet, 3 feet, and 1 foot. Starting with the 4-foot piece that'll make up the handle and middle portion of the blade, I measured 12 inches up and made a mark. Next, I made a cut on either side with my pole saw, then went over to the bandsaw and removed a ½ inch from each side. And as always, be safe when you're using power tools. Once that was done, I ripped the 3-foot piece in half on the table saw. This will make up the rest of the body of the blade. Then I squared up the sides of the 4-foot piece on the table saw so all the pieces would be flush once I glued them together. Speaking of just that, it's time to glue this bad boy together into one piece. I used a generous amount of wood glue and spread it around with a silicone brush, then clamped it all together. Moving on to the 1-foot piece, I started by sawing it in half on the bandsaw. Then I measured out 8 inches and cut it to length on the miter saw. These are going to be the guard for the sword. To give them a bit of contrast, I lightly torched them. While I was waiting for the glue to dry on the main body, I started roughing out the handle with my rasp. This part was probably the most time-consuming and strenuous part of the whole project, and would have gone faster if I used a draw knife or some other better tool for the job, but this was the best idea I had at the time. Once that was pretty close, I finished shaping it with my orbital sander. After that, the glue was done drying and I could run it through the planer to get nice, even surface on both sides. Then back to the miter saw to cut in a 53-degree angle for the blade tip. Now that the main shape is done and thinking I had enough time, I decided to stain the sword using a red mahogany stain. My plan here is that once it was dry and I cut in the bevels, it'll give a great contrast next to the natural wood. After a few minutes, I wiped off the excess stain and then used a heat gun to speed up the drying process. With everything dry, I went over to the table saw and, being extremely careful, I cut in a 10-degree bevel on both sides of the sword. Next, it's time to assemble the guard. I cut a couple of pieces for the side of the guard using one of the cutoffs from the 4-foot piece, then glued them on and nailed them in place using my brad nailer. Then I glued on the 2 main pieces, clamped them on, and attached them with brad nails too. A touch of fire helps tie everything together, and then it's on to detail work. In the original design, Cloud's Buster Sword had these rivets around the guard, and I had these furniture tags left over from the previous project and thought they would do nicely to emulate that look. I just pushed them into the wood and then tapped them the rest of the way using a small hammer. We're almost done with just 19 minutes left to go. I used an X-Acto knife to do a bit of cleanup work, then I started on refining the blade edge using my orbital sander. I wanted to get it to somewhat of a point and also sand off some of the leftover stain that was left on the edge. And with 9 minutes left to spare, the Buster Sword is complete. I can't tell you how stoked I am with this sword. My inner child is going nuts. This is still a bit rough in a lot of respects, but for a 2-hour build, I am more than satisfied with it, and swinging this thing around is a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed this video and this project. I made this as part of Rockler's Time 2x4 challenge for the 2-hour entry. If you haven't already, go check out some of the other entries, they're really awesome. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.